The Electro-Voice EVM12L speaker is a behemoth of a speaker. Of course it's well known, it's legendary, it's heavy and chunky, but it's a 200 watt speaker with a lot of headroom and a very transparent sound, as people like to say. But does it work well for high gain rock and metal? That's what I want to find out today. So you know what, let's jump in right away with a demo track with my Balaguer Espada 2024 into the Soldano Astro-20 on the Red Galaxy and into my Grossmann Fatbox cabinet loaded up with the EVM12L. Take a listen. All right, that sounded interesting and definitely unique. Definitely not the same as a V30, obviously. I mean, we're taking the V30 as a baseline here because everybody knows that speaker. Everybody loves that speaker, right? Well, almost everybody anyway. But the EVM is very different. It's known for being used by famous guitarists like Joe Bonamassa. And I know that a lot of clean players, blues players, fusion players and stuff like to play that speaker because it's very even sounding, very roadworthy too, and obviously it has a lot of headroom so it doesn't really distort. So it's an interesting speaker, and it obviously wasn't made to sound anything close to the V30. It's a very different thing, right? But in this video I do want to compare it to the V30, not because I think that one is better than the other or something like that, but just because the V30 is our baseline, okay? Now the V30 obviously is much more in your face and it has that upper mid peak that everybody always talks about regarding the V30. It's sizzly, you know, it has a crunchy mid-range and it's quite aggressive sounding in comparison to the EVM. So before we do an actual comparison, let's take a listen to a section of that song, but just with the V30 alone. Take a listen. So yeah, that was quite different, right? Much more crunchy, sizzly, and a bit more spiky in the upper mids. The EVM definitely was more flat sounding in a way. I mean, not super full range or anything like that. It's still like a mid-range speaker and it has a top end roll-off and everything. But it has a very different character. I do think that the EVM12L sounds quite massive. It has a very big roar sounding, even in my 1x12 cabinet. So for the details, again, I used my Balaguer Espada 2024 into the Red Galaxy on gain 2 on the Astro-20 for a nice Soldano high gain tone. And the way I created this test was I first did a pass through my V30 with my regular mic positions and levels, basically. I'm using 2 SM57s and 1 MD421. Both the SM57s are placed a little bit differently on the cone, so that way I have a little bit more flavors to choose from and to blend them accordingly. And then when I loaded up the EVM12L, I put the mics closer to the center of the speaker. One of the SM57s especially was moved closer to the center of the speaker because I know that those speakers tend to be a little bit darker and less pokey in the upper mids. So keep that in mind. But of course, when you're going to switch to a drastically different sounding speaker, you're not going to use the same mic positions. I did keep the amp settings the same though. So what we're going to do now is do a comparison. We're going to do a pass with the V30 versus the EVM12L. Again, with the same amp settings, with the same settings as you heard before, but now you're going to hear them side by side, which is going to be an interesting experience because they sound so different. But keep an open mind and just use your ears and listen for which one you like the most. It's that simple. Take a listen. Interesting, right? So the EVM is more flat, a little bit more dark, and it's definitely not as pokey. You know, it doesn't have that upper mid hump that the V30 has, or mid-range hump, or whatever. It's more flat and full, and it's more, yeah, how do you say it? More tamed, I guess, and it's less bitey and aggressive than the V30. Now, the V30 is baked in our brains, right? And I love that sound so much, and it's going to be very hard for me to stray from that, but it's a refreshing sound. And with some amplifiers, a speaker like this could work really well, especially for low gain and clean tones, I think. So I think that it's a really cool and interesting speaker indeed. Now, let's also do that same comparison, but this time with the isolated guitars. Take a listen. So there you have it. The difference was huge, as was to be expected. The EVM12L sounds quite different than the V30. In a way, the V30 kind of sounds like a toy in comparison to the EVM, if you know what I mean. The EVM just sounds very full and mighty, and the V30 sounds a bit like humpy and crunchy. I do love the V30 again, so I can't say that I prefer the EVM over the V30, no. But it's interesting to hear them side by side. And it's good to know that those speakers are available, 200 watts per speaker. So imagine having them in a 4x12, that's a lot of power. But you're gonna need to pair it with a good amplifier and place the microphones on your cabinet accordingly to get the desired sound. But that's always the case with any speaker, right? So I thought that this test definitely was interesting. Thank you so much to the folks at Electro-Voice for sending this speaker over. I really appreciate it. If you want to support this channel, you can buy one of my IR packs. In the description below, I'll post a link to my web store, or get something in my affiliate links like the EVM12L or a Celestion Vintage 30 at Thomann or Sweetwater or Tube Amp Doctor, by the way. Of course, let me know in the comments down below what your thoughts are regarding the differences between the speakers. I'd love to know, and also please hit the like and subscribe buttons, as that also really helps the channel out. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope to see you soon. Cheers.